I've been amazed again how the words of the songs, words spoken, shared by Elizabeth, how it is all part of a whole. And that, my friends, is the work of Spirit. You are surrounded by people who are crooked and corrupt, our text states. Yeah, tell me about it. Every week, there seem to be new iterations of the same explosive malady. Corruption is showcased wherever we turn. It seems to always be on camera, front and center. Many times it is no longer called corruption, and it certainly is not called crooked. Crooked means being bent or out of shape. It points to being fundamentally out of alignment, therefore unable to perform optimally. Of course, informally, crooked also means illegal and dishonest. Yes, that would capture what we are observing and living. We can't help but see it, hear it, breathe it. We react, we rebuff, and recoil, and yet, all to no avail, it seems. Can our scriptures help us in this predicament? You may have noticed that corruption and illegality are not the center part of this text at all. Crooked and corrupt merely gives insight into the context in which these words were written and which these words were read. We are called to a different model, an entirely different set of values. In a host of admirable characteristics, you may have noticed that there are only two references to negative qualities in our text, and that's beside these descriptors of corrupt and crooked. These two negative characteristics seem to be intentionally oblique. In the 6th verse, there's a statement referencing exploitation, but the call is for the exact opposite. Though Jesus was in the form of God, he did not consider being equal with God something to exploit. Similarly, in the 14th verse, we read an admonition to the followers of the Christ that they are to do everything without grumbling and arguing. So the only negative references or qualities actually impact or mean the exact opposite. Jesus did not exploit. The followers of Christ are not to grumble and argue. Rather, we're offered 8 things, at least 8 things, to focus on and to practice. Love, humility, collaboration, service, unity, adherence to a mandate, character, and innocence. And our eyes may glaze over as we hear that list, because it will not make the headlines, and it does not convert into a sensational influencer social media post. What are these words really? Well, love is caring for someone else the same way you care for yourself. Unity means finding common ground. Collaboration requires that we listen so carefully that we find mutually beneficial give and take solutions. Humility, well, that's a quality we like to be around, but cultivating that is much more difficult. It includes seeking the well-being of others, not just ourselves. Service, which is giving, helping, supporting, offering encouragement. Adherence to a mandate is faithfulness to a cause, basically. And that requires a great deal of perseverance and discipline and time. Character. Well, that sums up all of these qualities. Innocence is a kind of non-blemished wholesomeness that cannot be equated with naivete. Oh man, this is all so boring. There's no glamour, nothing to hold our attention or our interest. Let's just move on. Right. There is no glamour here. And in case your life is very different than mine, most of life is far from glamorous. It's ordinary. It is mundane, one step in front of the other, doing what we know is the next right thing. Think about times you hear or read about people who do extraordinary things, people who act courageously or ethically, and not from a place of obligation. I can think of an example from this week. Probably you can too. This week, a Minnesota lawmaker, her husband, and their family pet lay in state in the Minnesota State Capitol. This was no ordinary occurrence. This particular lawmaker, current lawmaker, was assassinated. Her husband and their family pet were murdered by a Christian nationalist on a mission with a hit list of more than 40 people on it. Many in this nation were horrified when this news broke earlier this month. Others, especially those who make up the current administration, were conspicuously silent. Or even worse, they uttered vile, derisive comments about those targeted in that very crime. Did you notice who showed up to honor the lives and legacies of those that had lain shattered at the feet of an assassin? We saw this Friday. We witnessed high-level statespeople, though not from the administration, as well as very ordinary folk actually showing up with love, with humility, and a moral compass for service. There were the ones who showed honor for the dead, but also to hold up a mirror to those currently in the highest office of the land who refuse to decry this politically motivated murder and to honor the legacy of those deceased. This is the face of decency, innocence, love, and honor. This is what we saw as we watched people filing through the Minnesota State Capitol Rotunda on Friday. They shone like stars. There are few, if any, moments in our lives when the cameras are on us, live streaming our character for the world to see, but there are always people who are watching. There's another example of what it looks like to have an attitude of the Christ. The story is about an elderly gentleman, his daughter, and a caregiver in a hospital room. Caregiver and patient struck up a warm conversation soon after meeting. And quite quickly it became clear that the caregiver was born in another country and her mother tongue was not English. They exchanged experiences with both of their home countries and languages warmly, valuing each other's experience and culture. The daughter, who wrote the story, noted that her father ended the conversation with these words: "Our country is so much richer because of people who come here from other places, just like you did. I am so glad that you're here." They shone like stars. It may not be glamorous, and few of us will have our character highlighted in a social media story, but living this kind of life is fulfilling, if not glamorous. Knowing one is doing something to better the world, and even hearing about it some decades later, like Elizabeth shared about the foundation's origins. As our text states, instead of each person looking out for their own good, watch out for what is better for others. Adopt the attitude that was in Jesus, the Christ. What contributes to becoming a person like that? There's a traditional saying that the mind takes its shape from what it rests upon. Based on what we've learned about experience-dependent neuroplasticity, A modern version would be that the brain takes its shape from what the mind rests upon, writes Dr. Rick Hansen, who is a researcher, psychologist, and senior fellow at UC Berkeley's Greater Good Science Center. The concept of you become what you dwell on is no longer folklore or fantasy. It is scientifically proven. If we spend our time only immersed in dystopian literature, or mindlessly scrolling social media, or obsessively watching every headline, disgustingly repeating every word, action, decision that blatantly breaks down a functional government, we will not become the kinds of people who are shining stars living in a crooked and corrupt environment. We become what we most fix our minds upon. If we want to become people who promote love, unity, collaboration with others, which also is called reaching across the aisle, people of humility and service, faithful to a cause or purpose greater than ourselves, people of good character and wholesome innocence, exactly these are the values, the virtues, and the goals that we must consciously pursue, systematically focusing on them. This becomes then the focus of meditative practice before it becomes the stuff of stardust. Becoming people who are beacons of hope, shining like stars, creating islands of coherence in an otherwise chaotic environment, has a point of origin. It is intentional, it is focused and enduring. Just one or two quick practicalities. To become one who shines like a star, shift your attention as soon as you catch yourself focusing obsessively on a horrifying news cycle, on the demeaning and vulgar speech patterns that so many employ. Think of 3 things that you can be grateful for in that moment. Could be as easy as, I'm able to breathe deeply. I ate a great meal today. I will sleep in a bed tonight. None of this is guaranteed for many people who share our nation, our city, our streets, and our world. When you find your heart pounding with frustration and anger, take 3 very deep breaths. And then notice how your heart rate drops. This is a time to repeat several of the character traits you wish to promote in your life. It could be the ones we mentioned this morning, like collaboration, or seeking the well-being of another, or humility, such things. It's when we do these things consistently that we will notice a shift right then. First of all, in ourselves, and then in our environment around us. Shining like stars in a crooked and corrupt environment. When you feel helpless to reflect the stardust of what you really are, remember this sentence: God is the one who enables you both to want and to actually live out good, divine purposes. If our goal is to remain people of integrity and innocence in the world in which we live, it will require constant vigilance and effort. But it doesn't need to become overwhelming, because this is who we were created to be, not the skewed, reduced versions of humanity that are on full display every time you turn on your television or scroll on your phone. With every conscious effort and practice, we are simply returning to who we are. We are grounding ourselves. I love these words that Dr. Maya Angelou spoke, and I quote, "There is a place in each of us that we must keep clean and pristine, so nobody has the right to treat you badly, no matter your mother, your father, your wife, your husband, or anyone. because that might be the place that you go to when you meet God. Dr. Angela was referring to innocence. That space that incubates the qualities of a shining star. Without innocence, there is no empathy. Without innocence, there is no common good. Without innocence, we quickly slide into the ways, the practices, the attitudes and speech of the dominant culture. When we adopt the attitude that was in Jesus the Christ, when we tend to the stardust of which we all are made, the world is a miracle. Our lives are miracles. And in the process of recognizing this miracle, we spread its light, its goodness, and its energy to all of those around us. This is how we begin watching out for those who are our neighbors. We are seeking the well-being of those around us. The concept of you becoming what you dwell on is not folklore or fantasy. It is actually scientifically proven. Yes, we are surrounded by people who are crooked and corrupt, and yet that in no way needs to dictate the shape into which we need to twist ourselves in conformity. No, we can and we must go about being who we already are. One breath, one prayer, one meditation, one intentional shift of our consciousness at a time. And whether we are recognized or overlooked as stars hardly matters. Protect your innocence so that you can cultivate empathy and defy the egregious myth that says that the fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy. There could not be anything further from the truth. Any display of the attitude of the Christ will cause this candle of our existence to shine brilliantly, like the stars. And in turn, this light will light up the world in which we live, and we will provide light for all of those with whom we relate. May it be so.